In the middle of the 18th century, a king gave one of the strangest military orders in history. He told his soldiers to guard a field, not to stop enemies, not to defend the kingdom, but to keep ordinary villagers away. During the day, the guards never left, but every night, something changed. As soon as darkness arrived, villagers quietly climbed the fences, filled their sacks, and disappeared before sunrise. The king knew, in fact, this was exactly what he wanted. Because the people believed whatever was growing inside that field had to be priceless. It wasn't gold, it wasn't silver, it wasn't jewels. It was a potato. How could something so ordinary become one of the most valuable plants in the history of civilization? And why did humanity almost refuse to eat it? Before the potato, humanity fought the same enemy every single year: hunger. One summer without rain, one winter too cold, one harvest gone, and an entire village could disappear. We imagine kings controlled history, but even kings could not command the weather. People prayed. They blamed witches. They blamed sinners. They blamed God. They blamed everyone, except the soil beneath their feet. While Europe begged the skies for mercy, thousands of miles away, another civilization had already solved the problem. They weren't searching for a miracle. They were growing one, hidden beneath the ground, where no European had ever thought to look, high above the clouds, where most people believed life was impossible. An empire was quietly rewriting the rules of survival. Every night, the mountains froze. Every day, the sun burned the earth. Almost nothing should have survived. But beneath the frozen soil, one humble plant ignored every rule. It survived, where wheat could not. The Inca didn't trust luck. They studied the mountains, season after season, generation after generation. Over centuries, they created thousands of potato varieties, each one designed for a different mountain. To outsiders, they were just different potatoes. To the Inca, each one meant the difference between life and death. Then, they achieved something extraordinary. They found a way to make food last. For years, winter arrived without warning. But the Inca had learned something extraordinary. They stopped fighting the cold and turned it into an ally. They left the potatoes outside all night long, letting the mountain do the work. At sunrise, they pressed out the water, then dried the potatoes beneath the fierce mountain sun. Again and again. What remained was called chuño. Light enough to carry, strong enough to survive for years. Long before electricity, before refrigerators, before canned food, they had already mastered food security. While an empire quietly solved the problem of hunger, another empire was crossing the ocean, looking for something else. In 1532, a man named Francisco Pizarro sailed toward South America, chasing a dream made of gold. He believed treasure could only glitter. Gold, silver, jewels. High above the clouds, another civilization measured wealth very differently. Gold could decorate a king, but it could never feed a child. To the Inca, true wealth was measured by tomorrow's harvest. Neither civilization understood that history was about to choose between gold and survival. When the Spanish finally reached the Andes, they filled their ships with the wrong treasure. In the 16th century, two worlds finally met. One searched for wealth, the other had already learned how to survive. The Spanish admired temples, precious metals, and imperial riches. The potato looked ordinary, alongside unfamiliar plants, strange seeds, and curious specimens. The potato quietly began its journey across the Atlantic. Nobody celebrated its departure. No trumpets, no ceremonies. History rarely notices the quiet beginnings. Europe needed food, more than ever. But when the potato finally arrived, it wasn't welcomed. It was feared. The plant that had protected one civilization was about to face its greatest enemy. Not disease, not war, human belief. By the late 16th century, the potato had finally arrived in Europe. It crossed an ocean, carrying the promise of survival. No one could see it yet. It didn't grow on trees. It wasn't harvested like wheat. It came from beneath the earth, and that alone made people uneasy. In an age shaped by symbols, people often judged a plant long before they ever tasted it. Rumors spread faster than evidence. Some claimed the potato was unhealthy. Others believed it belonged only to animals or the desperately poor. Families planted wheat. They trusted rye. They understood barley. But the potato remained an outsider. The potato had crossed an ocean. But its greatest obstacle wasn't distance. It was belief. Then, Europe faced something stronger than fear. Hunger returned. And this time, people had no choice. Fear can shape a generation, but hunger eventually challenges every belief. Bread became scarce, markets emptied, families stretched every meal, hoping tomorrow would somehow be better. Some farmers remembered the strange plant, growing quietly at the edge of their fields, while storms destroyed the harvest above. The potatoes waited safely beneath the soil. One family tried it, then another. Soon, necessity became curiosity. The potato spread, not because people trusted it, but because it kept working. Yet even then, millions still refused to grow it. One king decided that had to change. Remember the king who ordered soldiers to guard a field? Now, the secret can finally be revealed. Frederick believed the future of Prussia depended on one simple crop, but his people refused to plant it. He could have forced them. Instead, he chose something far more powerful: curiosity. He ordered soldiers to guard the potato fields during the day, but at night, they watched, just loosely enough. Before long, the villagers began stealing the potatoes, because anything protected by soldiers had to be valuable. By the next planting season, the stolen potatoes had become tomorrow's harvest. Soon, Prussia wasn't alone. Across Europe, fields began to change. Populations grew. Armies marched farther. Cities expanded. All because of a crop that almost no one wanted. What began as scattered fields slowly became a quiet revolution. Not through war, through harvest. Unlike many familiar crops, potatoes produced remarkable amounts of food from relatively small plots of land, and much of it remained safely underground until harvest. Harvests became steadier. Pantries stayed fuller. Families no longer feared every changing season. More children survived. Villages expanded. Towns became cities. Europe itself began to grow. A growing population meant more workers, more builders, more inventors, more dreamers. History often remembers the generals, the kings, the battles, but every army marched on food. Quietly, beneath the soil, the potato had become one of Europe's most dependable sources of food, and soon it would face its greatest test. Decade after decade, potatoes quietly became breakfast, lunch, and dinner for millions, from the valleys of Germany to the fields of France, across Poland and into Ireland. The potato spread quietly beneath countless feet. It was filling, reliable, productive. For countless working families, it became one of the foundations of everyday life. Success can create a dangerous illusion. The more dependable something seems, the more we depend on it. Entire communities began trusting the next potato harvest before it had even begun. But history rarely announces its greatest disasters. Sometimes they arrive silently. In the 1840s, an invisible organism crossed the ocean. Within a few years, millions of lives would never be the same. It carried no sword, no flag, no army, yet it would kill more people than many wars. Farmers noticed a few dark spots, nothing unusual, until they returned the next morning. Overnight, green fields turned black. The smell reached the villages before the news did. Families dug desperately, hoping the potatoes below had survived. They hadn't. Village after village, county after county, the harvest disappeared. Not from one farm, but from thousands. It had become a national catastrophe. History would remember it as the Great Hunger. The blight destroyed the harvest, but the famine that followed was shaped by human decisions as much as nature. Crop failure does not always become a famine. So why did this one? For many rural families, the potato wasn't simply important. It had become the foundation of everyday survival. Ireland still produced other agricultural goods, but ownership, trade, and access to food were far from simple. Relief efforts were introduced, but they struggled against the scale and speed of the crisis. As the years passed, hunger spread, disease followed, and countless families were forced to leave home. Many looked west, across the Atlantic, carrying little except hope and memory. They weren't searching for adventure. They weren't chasing fortune. They were searching for tomorrow. The Atlantic offered no promises, only distance between the life they knew and the one they hoped to find. Over the following years, millions left Ireland. Some escaped hunger. Many never returned. Their journey reshaped nations. In cities across North America, new neighborhoods grew, new businesses opened, new generations began again. It all traced back to a humble crop growing quietly beneath the soil. The potato had fed empires. It had sustained families. It had witnessed triumph and unimaginable loss. Yet its story wasn't over. Today, billions of people eat potatoes without ever asking how this ordinary plant conquered the world or what it taught us about survival. Think back to the beginning. One small plant, growing quietly, high in the Andes. It fed the Inca, crossed the Atlantic, changed Europe, fueled populations, witnessed famine, and traveled around the world. We often say, humans changed nature, but sometimes nature changes civilization. Every empire, every invention, every city first needed someone to eat. Maybe the greatest inventions aren't machines. They're the ordinary things that quietly keep humanity alive. The next time you see a potato, Remember, you're looking at one of history's greatest survivors, and perhaps one of humanity's greatest teachers. History remembers emperors, generals, explorers, but perhaps the greatest force behind civilization was never a king, never an army, never a nation. It was a humble potato waiting beneath our feet.